say we have a sphere, right? First we draw the sphere, and then we draw a cube here, right? So it's a sphere, right? Actually, let's draw the cube first, because that way we understand the contrast first, and then we are going to understand the reflected light. So I'm going to lock a cube here, right? Or some solid, right? So now what happened is this, that the light is coming from here in both cases, right? From here like this. Therefore, this is going to be the shadow mass. Right? And this is flat. So I can, unlike what we're going to do later for the sphere, I can block in this with flat line, straight line like this, because the cube is flat, right? So the plane of the face of the cube is flat. Then you can see I'm layering graphite, but I'm taking care of not to leave any lines. The line that you see are not my line, the line of the paper, right? So I don't want to have unruly lines. Then, the idea is I want to saturate the paper as evenly as possible to have control over the value, the tone development. Now that is going to catch the light because it's straight on top. So this is the light area, right? I think some of you already know this, but it's always a good idea to go over it, especially now that we are developing a tonal scale, right? Having a refresher on this is always good. And now this area here, we leave the value of the paper. Battery value, right? Good. Why is this like this? We're going to see it later on like this, because the light here is closer to the light source, right? So the plane is closer to the light source, and it's more perpendicular. This is more tangent. So that catches less light. So now what's happening here, though, is there is something called direct simultaneous contrast, right? Or direct simultaneous contrast. So what it is this, that as I put this next to that, this area here appears to be darker because it's next to something very, very light, right? And then this area here appears to be lighter. But as we move away from the contrast, that looks lighter. And see, it makes sense? So if that is true between these two, where the contrast is the strongest, right, it's going to be true also between these two and these two. So now here, I'm going to have similarly an area that here appears to be darker, but not as dark as that, because the contrast between these two is less. Mm-hmm. And so therefore this area here looks a little bit lighter, but not much, right? Right? And now same thing in here, where this is going to appear to be lighter, and this appears to be darker, but not much. Make sense? That makes a big difference when you paint, when you draw, when you do this kind of thing. Let's see if I have one of the... see the exercise that we did at the academy years and years ago. See how these areas in here have all this slight difference. See that in contrast, etc. And And then there is the reflected light, right? Let me see. The reflected light could be here. So then bounces off, comes in here. So this area here will look lighter also because of the reflected light. And when I have here now a dark value, like that, right? This now will appear to be lighter because of this dark value, right? So this is something that we want to consider, because when we do this kind of stuff in here, right? How light disappears versus that compared to that. That's why I was saying originally when I blocked in the value, that looked too dark to me. But then when I added this, that looks lighter now. Make sense? So I wait before I panic. I wait a second and I say, oh my God, it's too bright. No, wait a second, right? Now here instead, what happened is this. The light now comes from here, right? So this is going to be now the division between light mass and shadow mass, right? And this is the shadow mass. This is the core shadow. The core shadow is also called zonal tangency, but I think that this zonal tangency is past the tangency itself, right? So, but let's see. Now here we're gonna have this. The light source is here, right? The light source is here. So what happening here? This is now the highest highlight, because that's the point where the light is most direct, more perpendicular, and closest to the form. Therefore, it gets the highlight, right? Well, that's the highlight, right? As we move down here, we have all these areas of different values simply because the light is going to be a little bit slightly more distant and less perpendicular to the form. Therefore, let's say we leave this a little bit lighter here, right? We leave this the value of the paper, and then now this is going to be a little bit darker. It's going to be darker, right? When we get to this point in here, that's the area basically where you have the passage between the light mass and the shadow mass. And because of the contrast, also the passage in the dark area, I see a dark area here, a dark band. That's called core shadow, shadow accent, zonal tangency, terminator. It's totally the same thing. It's the point where the passage from the light to the shadow. So in black and white we don't see it, but in color we're going to have also not just a change in value, but also a switch in chroma and temperature. The area that are going to be in this area on the shadow mass are going to be darker, yes, but also different temperature, the opposite temperature of that, and then less chromatic, grayer, right? So now here, usually the core shadow, which is basically this, see that? And that's a reflected light. So if I look at this as a sphere, right, look at a sphere, that area there is the highlight, right? That is the core shadow, and that is the reflected light. Now, one more, and then of course the reflected light is also here, right here, like this, right here, like that. And the same thing is there, the shadow, right? That will increase the sense of glow because of direct simultaneous contrast. Now, going back to what Leora was saying, when we block in the sphere, the value for the sphere, so this is the sphere, right? And this is the core shadow here, right? Therefore, I'm going to have an area of highlight that probably looks like it should be here, right? But I don't want to block into I don't want to block at the highest highlight. I want to block in gradually here. Look, this is barely visible, right? Here, right? Just barely visible, right? And this, what I'm blocking in is the weakest value that is slightly lighter than the value of the paper. So that I know the value of paper, I don't touch that. I leave it, right? I have value there, I leave it. Then I see that what I'm doing here, and now I'm slightly changing direction here, like that. I'm weaving these lines like this. But this is
you're not making your lines like this.
I could, but not in this technique. But this technique is more about the illusion. It's not so the line like those would be for the structural drawing. But this is a tonal, it's tonal rendering. So it's different, right? So in this case in here, I mean, you could do it to as a way of organizing the form, because I do this, right? See that? I do curve the line like this, right? But I don't want the line to be visible. I kind of merge them together so they disappear. I don't want to have the line visible when I do this, because we need to achieve the sense of illusion of the effect of the light on the form. Then here, now I have another area that can be a little bit lighter, right here. And in here, I just see I go different direction, kind of weaving the form, right? But I take care not to have any line visible, right? Oh wow, right. I messed it up. I had the charcoal on my fingers. And right. So now here I keep adding until I have the glow of the highlight. But what I don't want to have, lines visible, because they will conceptualize the form instead of creating the illusion of reality. That makes sense?